Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to call this meeting to order. Secretary, can you please call the roll? I think I'm here. Thank you. I apologize that we are starting a little late this afternoon. I appreciate your patience with me as I am trying to be ready and be more prepared. Just some simple housekeeping. Please silence your electronic devices. I know mine went off the other day, so hopefully that's a good reminder for everyone else as well as myself and other committee members. And I'll just remind everyone we are recording everything, so if you could please state your name clearly for the record when you are called to the table, and every time you answer a question, if you can remind us what your name is again, just so we have a clear record going forward. And at this time, I need to get all these numbers. It's like every other year, I got to remember the numbers again. Are we going in just the order here?
Or whatever you'd like to do, but
I think I haven't heard from anyone that needs to get out of here right away, so I'm just going to go in the order as listed on the agenda. So at this time, I will open the hearing on Senate Bill 53. And this establishes certain requirements related to notices of road hazards and road closures. And I will call our presenters up to the table, and please begin when you are ready.
thank you, Chair Wynn and members of the committee. My name is Taylor Allison, Taylorallison. I am the Lyon County Emergency Manager and Government Affairs Director, so thank you for having me. Get this going for you. So we've all been there, following GPS directions only to hit an unexpected road closure, a washed out path, or a detour that wasn't on the map. These challenges can be exacerbated during emergencies, and during the severe storms of 2023, this problem became more than just an inconvenience. It became a real safety risk. Lyon County identified a critical gap in how road closures and hazards were communicated, leading to delays, confusion, and dangerous situation for drivers. That's why we brought forward Senate Bill 53 to the Nevada Legislature, aiming to ensure timely and accurate updates for road conditions, because in moments of crisis, reliable navigation isn't just helpful, it's essential. Lyon County, during that time, experienced a historic landslide in Wilson Canyon, if you're familiar, on Highway 208 between Urington and Smith Valley. During that time, Lyon County received 23 disabled and abandoned vehicle calls for services to our dispatch center, as well as deployed 7 search and rescue missions. So as we looked into this issue further, we learned that counties and jurisdictions across our state have similar challenges and unfortunately have even experienced tragic deaths due to this challenge. So we did submit a couple of examples of what we saw during that time in 2023, including passenger vehicles and several commercial vehicles between Mason Valley and Smith Valley in Lyon County. The example on the left here is a commercial truck that was stranded for nearly a month between southern Lyon County and Mineral County, as well as another near Smith Valley, Nevada in Lyon County. And we have had several travelers in our community that have gone as far as not only traveling beyond road closures, but moving concrete barriers to follow their GPS navigation devices. We find that Senate Bill 53 is pioneering a Western states issue. Other states have similar challenges. The Wyoming Department of Transportation reported road closures and ill-advised detours during just one storm in 2023, also resulted in 28 search and rescue missions in Sweetwater County alone. There's several examples as well from California wildfire evacuations where GPS had routed folks into evacuation zones. So as proposed, 53 will allow local governments to update Nevada 511 with road closures and hazards, add 2 GPS navigation providers as non-voting members to the Advisory Committee on Traffic Safety, provide a method for local public safety officials to report road hazards and suggest alternate routes as the technology's algorithm allows. Mandates road closures must be reported to GPS navigation platforms within 48 hours. and impose a $500 a day penalty for GPS providers that fail to report, which understandable, no one likes penalties. We see this as a match to the county investment in these types of search and rescue missions that are caused as a result. And I just wanted to add, not only does the public rely on GPS and accurate information, but so does our public safety departments. Our public safety answering points, or PSAPs, our local dispatch centers, rely on accurate GPS to accurately deploy public safety resources, including law enforcement and EMS. And with that, I will take any questions.
Thank you, and we will start with Senator Pizzina.
Thank you so much for the presentation, and thank you for coming by my office as well. I really appreciate it, and it's great to see you again. I was wondering if any other states have anything like this currently in law.
Taylor Allison, for the record, we have found that other states have similar challenges, do not have similar policy, could not find other examples. Wyoming, I brought that one because they are pioneering sharing data with industry to look at potential policy to address similar challenges. Other states are in the same boat as far as what can we do to address this critical issue. So more examples, unfortunately, than policy precedent.
Thank you so much. And I guess my only question then would be, if this is something that's maybe newer, what conversations have been had maybe with the GPS navigation services just to make sure that something like this could go into effect?
Taylor Allison, for the record, we are currently in conversations. There's some folks that represent the GPS providers in the room on how we can continue, not only through policy. What this specifically addresses is in times where it may be a little more timely. There are other examples we've heard, such as Washoe County, Dog Valley Road. That's a common one where folks take it as an alternate route for I-80. If it's a pre-planned alternate route, that we could share that information ahead of time. But often in emergencies, we don't have that kind of time. And that's exactly what we found in 2023.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And I have read stories of people who are following GPS who have gone on to bridges that have washed away. So I understand why you're bringing the bill, and I thank you so much for the presentation.
Oh, I think you were getting off easy. I knew if I waited long enough,
Yeah.
he would have some questions. Go ahead, Senator
Thank you,
Hanson.
Madam Chair. Okay, is there a reason because I didn't realize that this is basically going to be a pilot program? As Lyon County, is there any reason Lyon County couldn't do this independently of having a state law passed?
Taylor Allison, for the record. The challenge we've had with communicating with navigation providers through the current reporting system is that there's a significant delay from anywhere between 4 days to several weeks using the tools that are available to us. And so we'd like to see this timeline shortened if possible so that we don't have delays in addressing public safety challenges.
Oh, so what, you think Lyon County doesn't have enough clout to make the navigational people do it? So you need the state of Nevada to kind of be the whipping boy, I guess, or carry the big club or whatever?
Powerful arm. Taylor Allison, for the record. And I'll just add, we have learned some of the ways the system works is that even though we report, they use real-time data to track folks. And you saw pictures of the challenges. We put up the road closures, we man them, and people travel beyond them anyway. And so we truly trying to look a little upstream.
No, it seems like a good idea. I was just kind of wondering, whenever you have a pilot program, put it on a state level, it's like, But if you have a county that wants to do it and it works out, and next session we can come back and say, hey, everybody should adopt it. But I'm hoping there's somebody in the audience from the navigational platform people, so love to hear from them too. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And if there are people that are planning on testifying either in support, opposition, or neutral, and you have some of these answers to some of these questions, I would encourage you to indicate that, and if our members have some further follow-up, I'll allow that. But seeing no other questions at this time, I will have you step back, and we will take any testimony that we have in support of Senate Bill 53. Don't all run up here. Did we catch that? Do we have any testimony in support on the phone for Senate Bill 53?
Testify in support for Senate Bill 53. Please raise your hand in the Zoom window to take your place in the queue.
Yes, hello, Legislature.
Yes, go ahead and begin when you're ready. Please state your name.
Sure. My name is Mike Rollins, and I am the Public Information Officer for 775 Off-Road Recovery. We are based out of the Carson City, Nevada. City is our headquarters. I'm sure a lot of you folks have heard of us and the work that we do in the community. I am calling in this afternoon in order to voice in support of SB 53. As some of you could be familiar with some of the calls that you hear about on the news in the winter time, where individuals are redirected is through navigation programs or apps like that they should take a certain trail or a back road or something in order to get to their destination. What these don't typically take into consideration is that these are unmanned, unmaintained, and unpaved roads, which a lot of times it results in calls out to either emergency services, ourselves, another agency that we partner with is Sierra County, California, and the road up through the Dog Valley region on the east end of the Sierras is individuals, as an example, they'll try to take Interstate 80 as they're going into California and shut down there, it reroutes them, and then they go up there and then they get stuck. So we also saw this quite a bit is during the floods of 2023 in Lyon County, where roads were closed and individuals were redirected, like to take trails or unmaintained roads or county roads, and they found themselves in a predicament and a spot that they could not get out of, which resulted in us having to come out. I'd also like to say that we are happy to help out the community in any way that we can. We're happy to give back, but a lot of times individuals are solely following the directions on their GPS, and many times is when we get really bad storms or weather in the region, it does put a strain on our resources and the volunteers that we have available. So again, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to speak on this.
Thank you. And I'm sorry, sir, could you please state your name and spell your last name for the record?
Yes, absolutely. That's not a problem. My name is Mike Rollins. That is Rollins. And I'm the Public Information Officer for 775 Off-Road and Recovery.
Thank you so much for your testimony. If we can go to our next caller in support of Senate Bill 53.
Chair, the public line is open and working, but there are no more callers at this time.
Thank you. At this time, we will move to testimony in opposition of Senate Bill 53. If you can come up to the table and state your name for the record and spell it as well for our staff, and begin when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair. Michael Hillerby, last name Hillerby, on behalf of Google. And before I get too far, I want to make sure I lower Senator Hansen's expectations. I do not have much expertise in this area, but we're happy to get some of the smarter people that you can rely on at Google to do that. Appreciate the time that the sponsors took. We visit a little bit. We do have some concerns, particularly the very specific timeline of 48 hours and, of course, the $500 fee. as the NDOT neutral testimony that was submitted brought some of those issues up too. Who is going to do that? How is that going to be done? How is that adjudicated? So we do have some concerns there. But we want to continue to work with the sponsors and see there are a variety of ways to upload information through Waze, through Google's Maps content partners, where we partner with municipalities, tribes, state governments, and others to be sure that that information gets up. And I will get both the sponsors and the committee as appropriate more information about timeliness and how that's done, because I've asked for that information and I'm kind of waiting to get some more back. But we'd like to work with them. But those are the primary concerns at this point, and I would be happy to answer questions if I can.
I don't see anyone else to testify in opposition. Does the committee have any questions for this testifier? Do you have a question? Go ahead, Senator Buck.
I don't know if it's for you or the bill sponsor, but I was wondering is it law enforcement's responsibility to upload that as they come across an emergency? I honestly just had this happen on President's Day weekend. We were driving down by Lake Topaz and came up and went the one way to Yerington, and there was a massive car accident. And so we had to backtrack, maybe a bad example, but we had to backtrack it to go to Yerington. So whose responsibility is it to upload this into his system?
Taylor Allison, for the record, there are a number of people defined that can close roads in statute. How currently systems receive that information is through self-reporting of any users or through their specific programs for government and communities such as Waze to report. If that helps answer your question.
Thank you, I appreciate that. I'm going to go back to opposition testimony here. I know that's taking this out of order a little bit. Do we have, no, that's fine. Do we have any other testimony in opposition to Senate Bill 53? Can we go to the phone lines and see if there's any testimony in opposition to Senate Bill 53?
Chair, there are no more callers on the line to testify in opposition at this time.
And finally, we'll go to neutral. Do we have anyone to testify in neutral to Senate Bill 53?
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and committee members. Joe Harrington. I'm the Communications Director for NDOT, HARRINGTON. We submitted our testimony as an exhibit, but if you have any questions, we're here to answer them. We are in the neutral position on Senate Bill 53.
Is it possible for you to highlight maybe some of the things that were in your written neutral testimony?
Chair Joe Harrington, again for the record, yes. So essentially, this bill imposes some requirements on the state of Nevada to update and maintain road hazard information in its 511 system, which communicates with some of these GPS navigation providers. Should we, as the bill is written, have to encompass all roads and have all agencies communicating, there would be an additional staff burden. We just received a request from LCB Fiscal to produce a fiscal note on this piece of legislation, and we're working on producing that currently. To kind of speak to some of the comments from the committee, we would be willing to work with Lyon County, for example, outside of legislation to work on perhaps addressing some of these issues.
Thank you, and thank you for putting that on the record. And I'll just remind committee members that their neutral testimony and some of the potential impacts that this bill would have are on Nellis for your consideration as well. And I think Senator Buck might have a question for.
I'm sorry, I keep coming up with
No.
questions, but I'm like really processing this. I just wondered, who pays the penalty, the Waze or? Like, to me, it seems that they're at the whim of law enforcement or for somebody to report it. So they're on the receiving end of it.
Through the chair to
Maybe
Senator
we
Buck,
need to
that might be a
probably
better
vet.
question for the bill's sponsor, what they have envisioned. But for NDOT, I can say we are not an enforcement agency.
What we will do is probably after we close out,
Sorry.
that's okay. After we close out neutral testimony, I will call the sponsors back up to the table and maybe they can answer some follow-up questions that may have been elicited from some of the testimony that we just heard. So thank you, Mr. Harrington, for your neutral testimony. And if we can go to the phone lines for any neutral testimony, let's do that.
Chair, there are no callers to testify in neutral at this time.
So now I will ask you back up to the table and we will see if you can answer any of those questions or what your legislative intent was in drafting that penalty portion.
Thank you, Taylor Allison, for the record. Apologize, I'm starting to lose my voice today. To answer your question, the intent that was brought forward with the resolution from the county commissioners was to recover any enforcement costs. I don't think that was outlined clearly in the current rendition of the language, but we're happy to work on it further. And like I mentioned in my initial presentation, we see that as a match to the investment that our state provides to these search and rescue missions, whether it's at the state police level or at local county levels. How can we work together? And we are very happy to work with industry partners to find some solutions with Department of Transportation as well. And we've all been in conversations about this topic. Thank you, I appreciate it.
Thank you. Do you have any further questions, Senator Beck?
I don't think so.
Thank you. It's okay if you do. Thank you for your presentation. And at this time, I will close the hearing on Senate Bill 53, and I will open the hearing on Senate Bill 80. And I will ask our presenter to come and begin when you are ready.
Hello, Chair and committee members. Sean Sever from the Nevada DMV. And I have our CED Administrator, J.D. Decker, at the table in Las Vegas. We appreciate you hearing SB 80 today. That will clarify current statutes for activities our Compliance Enforcement Division has been performing for the past few years that address stolen vehicles, unlicensed motor vehicle industry involvement in the trafficking of stolen vehicles, and emission system tampering. So we are not expanding our duties. We're actually hoping to continue preventing Nevadans from getting taken advantage of. And now I'd like to have Mr. Decker to summarize the different sections of the bill and give real-life examples of what is happening out there.
Thank you, Sean. Good morning, afternoon, Chair Wynn and committee members. I'm J.D. Decker. I'm the Chief of Nevada DMV's Compliance Enforcement Division. SB 80 addresses some loopholes in the law that CED has identified based on its efforts to recover stolen vehicles, protect the public from fraud, and to regulate motor vehicle licensee businesses. In order of importance, Section 2, 3, and 5 add criminal penalties to motor vehicle license types that are consistent with the graduated criminal penalties that motor vehicle dealers are subject to. This will aid CED in addressing repeat offenders in the garage and body shop area who currently are only subject to the same misdemeanor citation over and over again. We have recovered captive vehicles, which are vehicles that the shop refuses to return to their owners, as well as stolen vehicles from many garages, including unlicensed garages, who make more money from these illegal activities than can be deterred through existing misdemeanor fines. Next section, in Section 1, currently under NRS 42.540, CED law enforcement can seize a stolen vehicle without a warrant, like any other Nevada law enforcement agency. But when that stolen vehicle happens to be on the premises of one of the department's own licensees, like a garage or repair shop, CED becomes the only agency in Nevada whose primary responsibility is to investigate stolen vehicles, who must return with a warrant prior to recovering those stolen vehicles. This hinders our ability to recover stolen vehicles on the premises of our own licensees and is an unintended result of the 2001 split of DMV from DPS. We are requesting to have that ability returned to us in order to prevent these vehicles from disappearing and being sold to the unsuspecting public or hidden prior to our being able to recover them. Section 6, excuse me, Section 6 allows CED to obtain certain records with a warrant that are required to investigate stolen VIN-switched vehicles that have already been sold to Nevada citizens. These come in to our VIN inspection stations, driven in by a victim who's paid tens of thousands of dollars in cash for a vehicle, usually to someone they met on social media, and they have no legitimate info related to the seller because that information is faked. The infotainment call log data in modern vehicles can assist CED in tracking and arresting the criminals that were involved in selling the stolen vehicles to our Nevada consumers because they don't often have any other info on the seller. We investigate approximately 1.5 stolen VIN switch vehicles per week through our VIN inspection stations, not including the ones that are referred to us from other law enforcement agencies in other states. These citizens are out tens of thousands of dollars, and we can often only prosecute these crimes through the use of the data, of that particular data. Section 7 makes tampering with or bypassing a motor vehicle's emission system a misdemeanor. It also includes possessing electronic devices designed for the purpose of tampering with or bypassing the vehicle emission system. It makes them illegal, which currently they are. Currently, the only thing illegal about tampering with a vehicle's emission system is possessing fraudulent evidence of compliance, but the act of tampering with the vehicle is not currently illegal. Section 4 addresses inconsistent definitions of what constitutes a motor vehicle between NRS 42 and 487, which has resulted in certain garages not being required to obtain a trade license. We haven't identified any garages that actually only repair vehicles over 10,000 pounds. But this exception is used by unlicensed shops to justify illegal repairs of regular motor vehicles, which do require a license. This provision would not impact motor carrier internal fleet garages in any way. It would only impact those that are open to the public. And again, we haven't identified any actual businesses who would be impacted by this change. That's my summary of the sections. I appreciate it, Chair Nguyen, and I'd be happy to answer any questions if there are any.
I have a couple of questions, and you had indicated that you wanted to kind of give some examples. But before we do that, I know a lot of this is cleanup from, which is now about almost 25 years ago. So can you talk about when you discussed the 2001 changes and how some of these suggestions that are in this bill have to do with cleaning that up?
Thank you for the question, Chair Nguyen. To you and the committee, JD Decker for the record. So in 2001, when this occurred, CED's loss of the use of some of these statutes didn't impact us because for two reasons. Number one, VIN switched vehicles weren't really a thing. Vehicles were traditionally stolen. They were later recovered by a law enforcement agency on the street after they'd been used or sold or shipped out of the country. But in the past 5 to 7 years, with the advent of the technology to stamp vehicle frames with false vehicle identification information and trick out computers, VIN switch stolens, which are stolen vehicles that are then masked with a cloned or a fake VIN and then resold to the public, have become extremely prevalent and a huge problem for Nevada. So this data becomes more important to us at this point in time. The second reason is that in 2001, vehicles didn't come with infotainment systems and didn't have Bluetooth that was accessible or important to us. Generally through GPS trackers or observing vehicles and running them through NCIC on the street, these vehicles were able to be recovered. But now, when presented with a vehicle that a victim has just purchased from someone who presented false information, the only access we have to that person's identity is through the vehicle infotainment system, which didn't become important to us again until 5 to 7 years ago. Thank you.
No, thank you for that explanation. I have another follow-up question. Obviously, it gives me a little bit of concern when I see what potentially is arbitrary enhancements to criminal penalties in statutes. So I'm curious to see, is the need for these enhancing penalties is because you are seeing repeat violators of this? Like, do people routinely just keep committing this same crime knowing it's just a misdemeanor? or what is kind of the evidence behind wanting to increase and have these like increasing penalties?
Thank you for the question, Chair Nguyen. JD Decker, that's exactly right. The $100 misdemeanor fine on a unlicensed garage who may be doing thousands of dollars a month in business is not enough to deter them or induce them to obtaining a license. Many times these people can't obtain a license, or they had one and it was revoked for various reasons. We've seen cases as egregious as an unlicensed shop advertising with a sign and a shop and advertisements in the newspaper, collecting people's cars, signing repair bills with the legal owners of the vehicles, and then capturing them and holding them in a locked yacht and a locked lot and parting them out for profit, while the vehicle owners complain to the department that they want their vehicle back and they want it back in one piece, and they've paid thousands of dollars for repairs that aren't being conducted. So when we go out and we find these shops, these are repeat offenders, like I mentioned, with 10, 20, 30 vehicles on there, we're limited to a penalty of $100 per violation. And if the unlicensed shop or the bad actor is making thousands of dollars, we just don't have enough teeth to prevent that type of activity. Thank you.
Can I follow up with that? You keep mentioning $100 fine on a misdemeanor, and I'm looking at the statute as it currently stands, and it says any person who is in violation of this in both Section 2 and Section 3, it is currently a misdemeanor. Is that correct?
Thanks for the question, Chair Nguyen. JD Decker, that is correct. The misdemeanor does not change regardless of the number of repeated violations.
I guess my question is you said that it's a $100 fine, and in NRS, well, you have a couple of things here. In NRS, a misdemeanor, all misdemeanors carry with them a very minimum of, a maximum of 6 months in custody and a $1,000 fine. So do you just have where are you coming up with this $100 fine? Because I don't see that in statute. So is that just typically what the courts are imposing on these cases, is a $100 fine?
Generally, as exactly a general figure that the courts would impose. We're not in charge of the fines or the penalties. We write a citation. If we write multiple citations to a business over and over again, and we don't have any luck convincing a district attorney to prosecute the first one, we don't necessarily experientially have luck convincing them to prosecute the 8th one or the 10th one. So if we can increase the penalties for repeat offenders, then we think that that would be more of a deterrent. Thank you.
I'm just going to tell you, I think your problem is more with like these prosecuting agencies that are choosing not to prioritize this crime and less about the actual penalty that is in law. Is that correct?
JD Decker, for the record, thank you for the question, Chair Nguyen. Well, we believe that if there were graduated penalties and the level of crime became more serious, that we would have more luck in convincing the prosecuting agencies to take on the case. But we also think that there would be more at stake for the bad actor and more of a deterrent factor in law than currently exists. Thank you.
Thank you. I think my concern obviously is that this changes it to up to a $2,500 fine, which puts you at arguably a harsher financial penalty and still a misdemeanor than you would if you committed a battery against your spouse. So, and it's still up to, so the prosecuting agency could still just fine the person $100 or not do it, and you can't get to that second offense unless you get the first conviction in the first place. So I would just ask you to consider going back and working with some of these prosecutorial agencies to figure out what you can do to get them to enforce the law as it exists. I will go to other committee members at this point, and I'll start with Senator Buck.
Thank you, Chair Nguyen. So I was wondering, why wasn't this industry regulated when the dealers were? And it doesn't seem like, are just these chop shops, I guess is what they say on the street, are they sketchier than the dealers, or?
Thank you for the question. Through Chair Nguyen to Senator Buck, JD Decker for the record. I don't know why the penalties weren't consistent across the licensees time, the licensees at the time that the law was written. I can tell you that currently, our experience in the field is that most dealers are good actors and are doing what they should do, and we don't have the significant problems with them as far as deceptive trade and consumer protection that we do with repair shops currently. That shop isn't a bad word, because some of these shops are trafficking in stolen vehicles. They're selling parts from stolen vehicles. They're illegally modifying vehicles, or they're just keeping them from their owners and not doing the repairs that were paid for. So I would propose that the penalties that have kept dealers overall as good actors, it was our intention that those penalties would apply consistently with the other industries, and then hope that would work. Thank you.
So how often does this happen? And also, like, at one point, do we shut them down? Because, you know, I would be angry if I took my car to a shop to have it fixed and then it's held hostage and parted out. How often does that happen?
Thank you for the question. JD Decker for the record, through Chair Nguyen to Senator Buck. All day long in our world is the answer to the question. That's part of what we do. We get consumer complaints and we investigate those. Most of those consumer complaints in relation to motor vehicle licensees are on repair shops as opposed to dealers. We have a number of cases going at any given time in which repairs were paid for and promised but not completed, up to the even more egregious other side where vehicles were simply taken in by the repair shop and not fixed and sold for parts. The problem is when we have an unlicensed garage who has contracted with, let's say, 20, 30 customers and are holding their vehicles, we don't have any teeth other than to go in and write a misdemeanor citation, which eventually leads to them paying a minimal fine compared to the business that they're doing unlicensed and illegal. Thank you.
So what jurisdiction, or who has jurisdiction to shut them down? Nobody? They just keep doing it, code enforcement, or they just keep?
JD Decker, thanks for the question, Senator Buck, through Chair Nguyen. I'm sorry, I forgot to answer that part of it. We are the jurisdiction that handles those. The problem that we have is when a garage does not have a license and they're operating illegally without a license, then they don't have a license at stake. So we can physically shut them down, but they can literally reopen the next day, or they can move down the street. And we have also found that many times when we shut down a licensee by revoking their license, they reorganize, they put a family member's name on a new application, and they reopen in another location under a different name, and they're doing the same thing. So revoking the license, which ultimately through our administrative penalties is one of the more severe things we can do, doesn't necessarily work, which leads to the criminal penalties that we're looking for. Thank you.
Go ahead, Senator Hansen.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Sean and I talked briefly before. Question I have right now he had mentioned that, you know, in the big scheme of things, these aren't super serious crimes, and because Metro and sheriffs and so forth are dealing with much more serious issues, they tend to put these minor things more on a back burner issue. Is that your experience? And I see the law enforcement guys, maybe they're gonna come up and testify. But I'm just kind of wondering, right now, without changing this law, what is the problem? I mean, right now, when you guys have a vehicle with a fake VIN number, you call who? Metro, the sheriff's office? I mean, who enforces it now? And are you actually having a problem with them complying or having the time to do an investigation or what?
JD Decker for the record, to Senator Hansen through Chair Wynn. So we work very closely with Metro. They have a Viper team, a vehicle theft task force and financial crimes. We work along similar lines. They have as many cases as they can handle. We have as many cases as we can handle. There's plenty to go around. So we work very closely with them. When we, I think there's two parts to the question. When we get a stolen VIN switched vehicle at our VIN inspection or through investigation that a innocent customer has purchased, then we investigate those. We handle those. We refer some cases to Metro. They refer some cases to us. It depends on the nature of the case, whether we've investigated any of the parties before, how the case came in, whether it was a consumer complaint or through VIN inspection, or whether they got it from their own sources. So we work in conjunction with them. The problem with, if we're talking about Section 2, 3, and 5 and the criminal penalties for the repair shop is, the problem is we don't have enough to stop them from continuing to do this. Thank you.
Okay, so your real goal here then is to enhance the penalties well beyond misdemeanor to gross or felonies or something? I mean, that's the long-term goal here. You know, if like an example Sean had given was, I buy a $20,000 vehicle with cash or whatever and take it to DMV thinking everything's fine, and then they tell me that the VIN number is fake and that I just got taken advantage of. $20,000 is a significant crime. You know, I don't know if it rises to a felony under grand auto theft or how it works, but right now you're saying that you can only go to a maximum misdemeanor, which $1,000, you could throw them in jail for 6 months. So that's pretty rare, but you know, so your real goal here is to, because you already have law enforcement authority you just mentioned, but you feel the penalties are insufficient to act as a deterrent to certain types of shops. Is that kind of the gist of it?
JD Decker for the record, through Chair Wynn to Senator Hansen. Two different crimes. If the vehicle is VIN switched, stolen, and resold to a Nevada consumer, we will prosecute in the same way that Metro will. And we work with them, they work with us, we refer cases back and forth. Given that when it comes to repair shops and deceptive trade, and the ripoff that goes on against consumers that don't realize that the shop might be unlicensed or don't realize that they're never getting their car back, those penalties when it comes to those crimes are not sufficient to deter or shut down those shops. So yes, in answer to your question. Thank you.
Okay, so you have certain penalties are higher, you just, on certain cases, you need to do it. Sean gave an example, if there's some kind of device you can buy online for $50, and then they're gonna do a $2,000 change of your whatever in your exhaust system, and they put this thing on, and then your car will pass smog. Is that the type of stuff you're talking about right now? The misdemeanor crime penalty is insufficient?
JD Decker for the record, through Chair Wynn to Senator Hansen. Under Section 7, that's
And feel
correct.
free to go direct. I'm sorry, I've been trying to jump in there, but feel free to go direct.
Thank you. Under Section 7, that's correct. So the act of taking someone's money and promising to repair their vehicle so that it will pass smog, placing an emulator device on it so it tricks out a smog station for $20, giving the car back to the customer, and keeping the $2,000, those kinds of crimes are only subject to a $100 misdemeanor fine. And if you can make $2,000 each time you do that, it's hard for us to shut those operations down. Thank you.
Okay, well, I think the chair addressed the $100 question, because I don't know where that's coming from either, because it is $1,000 under NRS for misdemeanor. And theoretically, you can throw them in jail for 6 months. That's pretty rarely done on misdemeanors, but, okay. Well, hopefully the law enforcement guys can help, explain some a little more. I'm still a little confused on some reasons for it. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I have just a couple of questions. I think I know the answer, but when we go to section 7, when we're talking about tampering with the control of the emissions, my reading of this is kind of vague. Can you give an example of where, it sounds like you're seeing this when people come in. Where are you seeing these kind of violations, one? And two, how do you distinguish in this section between someone who's tampering with the vehicle because of the way it's written and someone who's maybe just playing around with their car?
JD Decker, for the record, thank you for the question, Chair Nguyen. So there is a definition of tampering in the NAC, rendering inoperable or intentional misadjustment of any motor vehicle device or element of design intended to control emissions. That's NAC 445B.452. So we're not looking to apply penalties to someone who doesn't know their car won't pass smog. And that's not what we're seeing. What we're seeing are street racers, performance shops that aren't licensed. We're seeing repair shops that are ripping off the public, promising, hey, for $2,000, we'll repair your vehicle so it will pass smog, and using an emulator device to pass smog for $20 smog check, and keeping the $2,000, giving the customer back the unrepaired vehicle, which has a smog certificate, but that smog certificate, that vehicle is still not going to pass smog the next year. So we see this at the emission stations. We see this at our emissions labs. We see it when we are working with other agencies regarding street racing and highly modified performance vehicles. I think we've all driven down the road and heard vehicles that seem too loud to be on the road. Those are vehicles that have either bypassed or modified their emissions devices. So I guess the answer to your question is we see it everywhere. When the vehicle is involved in a repair shop where money is being paid to fix a vehicle that's not being fixed, that's when we believe that actually making the tampering a crime would benefit the public. Thank you.
And then one final question before we go to testimony in support and opposition. Obviously, you're having difficulty with getting, it sounds like, prosecutorial agencies to, prosecute these in a way that it might hit some of these businesses in the pocketbook. I'm just worried that if it's $1,000 right now and they're resolving them to a $100 fine, if you raised it up to $2 million, they might still give them a $100 fine. So have you guys looked into civilly suing some of these businesses that have repeat offenders? Because that's where you would really be able to hit them in the pocket.
JD Decker, for the record, thank you for the question, Chair Nguyen. We have not civilly sued any of these shops. We don't know that these shops have assets that would result in maybe a court order that would, again, we have the ability to prohibit them from operating. We have the ability to send them a cease and desist. We have the ability to revoke a license. What we've seen is people reorganizing under different names, family members, and continuing to do business. I hope that answers your question.
So I know Senator Buck had asked some of these questions earlier. So you do have the ability to shut down some of these like egregious players that are like repeat offenders. How often are you doing that in a situation, in these situations with these repeat offenders?
JD Decker, for the record, thank you for the question, Chair Nguyen. Well, we have standards that we apply to the violation. So anytime a violation warrants a revocation, then if that makes sense, that's the route we would take. If the business is unlicensed, there is no license to revoke. So absent criminal penalties or possibly a civil lawsuit, we do have problems with repeat offenders who don't maintain an active license.
Do you refer those cases? I mean, it is already a crime to do business without a license.
JD Decker, for the record, thank you for the question, Chairwoman. We refer every case that we feel is prosecutable, yes.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. And at this time, I will go to testimony in support of Senate Bill 80.
Madam Chair, if I may, for the record, Andrew McKay, that's M-A-C-K-A-Y. I'm the Executive Director of the Nevada Franchise Auto Dealers Association. We support this bill for several reasons. Number one, my members, as Mr. Decker and Mr. Sever alluded to, when you look in terms of the penalties, they can be prosecuted for felony. For misdeeds. And, this is simply a parity question for us, full stop. Be remiss if I did not talk briefly about what the DMV does with respect to enforcement in conjunction with our friends at Las Vegas Metro PD. Every month we have our monthly dealer meetings in Reno and Las Vegas, and in Las Vegas, Metro's there in DMV. And it is scary, the amount of fraud that is perpetuated literally every day on the residents of this state. What they find with respect to VIN switching, these are very, very savvy individuals. And sadly, what ultimately happens when there's a VIN switch vehicle is the person will buy that car, and he or she thinks it is his. Then they go there and they are literally out all their money. This is going to give DMV, I think, the tools to continue to go after these folks. When you look in terms of emissions tampering, that's a public health issue, quite honestly. And when we discuss this amongst our board and at the meeting, is nobody should be going in and tampering and bypassing an emissions system. And again, the consumer may not even be aware of this. Oftentimes they are. But you get your vehicle smogged, it's compliant, I get mine compliant, Mr. Hardy gets his compliant, and there's good reason for it. We need to knock down NOx pollution, particulate pollution, and having to get them the tools to be able to hopefully at least, I mean, let's be honest, it's not going to stop the activity because criminals are going to commit crimes. But hopefully it's going to at least have a tampering effect on it. And so those, Madam Chair, give you a few reasons to why we're in support of the bill and support DMV in this measure. So thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair Nguyen and the committee. For the record, my name is Joelle Gutman, and thanks to Mr. McKay, Public Health is here in the House. We're not normally in this committee, but we at Northern Nevada Public Health, we are one of 5 health districts in the nation that houses air quality. So we are dedicated to the protection of air quality in Washoe County. And so I'm here for 2 reasons. And the first is I really just wanted to thank the DMV, JD Decker and Sean Sever for meeting with us. We had one concern in section 7.2B regarding changing out engines. We wanted to make sure that they were newer and required the smog testing. But I just, I don't think we get the opportunity to thank our state employees as often as we should. And I was just really impressed with their passion and their knowledge of their enforcement arm. And so really wanted to thank them. And then just let you know that motor vehicles are the largest source of pollution in Washoe County. We're currently violating 2 national ambient air quality standards and on the brink of violating ozone. So any improvement and any sort of closing of loopholes for emission standards, we support. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Wynn, members of the committee. Warren Hardy today representing Nevada Pick Apart. We're here to support as well. We certainly support if Chief Decker feels he needs additional penalties to go after this problem. It is a big problem. It's all over the internet, especially with regard to diesel engines. So we support that. I would concur. I wrote down Section 7 is clunky. We're going to go with the chair's kind of vague. So I do appreciate the chair bringing it up, because my reason for being here is to make sure that individuals who utilize our service, which largely is economically disadvantaged, who can buy a computer brain at our place for $200 where the dealer would charge $2,500. We also sell engines, and we want to make sure that there's exemptions in here, which I'm assured there are. I see it a little bit vague, as the chair did, but I just wanted to get on the record that my conversations with DMV and my understanding is that every possible scenario that an individual would look at to need to swap out an engine in a vehicle is covered by the exemption of this bill, as long as the smog equipment is working properly. That's I believe, the intent of it. I believe that's the way it was explained to me. And so we support that. We may work, even though I'm here in support, we may work a little bit with the department about trying to make this a little less clunky. I would also indicate that the VIN issue is an important one, and we addressed that as an industry 20 years ago or so when we created a statute that allows us to terminate the VIN. We call it kill the VIN. But when you bring a vehicle to us, we report it to the DMV as an end-of-life vehicle, and that VIN is no longer alive. So somebody could not steal that VIN off of one of our vehicles in our wrecking yard, take it and put it on another vehicle and use it, because that VIN number is terminated. That helps in a lot of these cases where businesses are purchasing engines and other things from us. It wouldn't address the unlicensed thing, and we would fully support anything Chief Decker believes he needs to go after the unlicensed folks. That's where the challenge is here. And so we do appreciate everything he's done. He's done so much with regard to this, and we want to be supportive of him in every way. So thank you for that opportunity to be on the record, Madam Chair.
Chair Wynn, members of the committee, Peter Kruger today representing a brand new trade association called Automotive Services Association Nevada, and this is an attempt to bring together licensed, independent licensed garages that's been talked about here, obviously emission stations, auto body shops, and others. I signed in as neutral, howsoever our questions were answered by Mr. Decker on the exemption for those businesses that have their own in-house. This is actually Section 4 B, 4 sub 5, that have their own shops and are able to perform this without being licensed. So I appreciate that clarification, and it makes a difference to us. So thank you.
Would you mind answering a question that we have from one of our committee members?
I don't care if you do mind.
Chair, that's how we've been doing this a long time, and I wouldn't dare say no.
Senator Hansen, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Since you represent the licensed people, how big of a problem is the unlicensed people? And how do you guys in your own industry regulate people that have emission shops that are licensed, but apparently are using devices to, get around doing it correctly?
Thank you, Senator Hansen. It's Peter Kruger, Krueger. I'll get on the record for that. It's been a long time. As far as, let's take emissions first. Emission stations, we rely on Mr. Decker and his CED folks to perform, and they're very diligent on something that they are out in the licensed centers. Now, I don't think unlicensed emissions are a backyard kind of activity. They don't have access to the certificates and things that are maintained by DMV. The independent, licensed independent shops are another matter. And really, that's why giving DMV any tool that they can to shut down the licensee with teeth is important, because that obviously takes away from business opportunities of independent licensed shops.
Okay, obviously, to me, I don't see how you could have an unlicensed smog thing, because everything has to go through DMV. And when I go and get my car smogged, they do everything for me. I pay an extra $15 to even get the registration taken care of or whatever. So I don't think there is an unlicensed element that exists in that world. But the types of shops you're describing, what are they? I mean, I heard unlicensed shops is a problem, because if you have a license, who can pull those licenses when these shops are doing, like me as a contractor, if I'm cheating plumbing companies, my customers, the state contractors board will revoke my license. Is there no way for people to have their licenses revoked if they're doing, bad stuff, especially if the DMV has reported them, they get the $100 fine and all that? There's no licensing revocation process?
I think we heard Senator Hansen from Mr. Decker that, yes, they have that authority now. It's just, they pop up today, they shut them down, and they open up down the street or around the corner with a new name, and his description of using family members, and they just incorporate or get licensed as a different entity. Huge problem.
Okay, so you hope the bill would actually help give them the teeth to rectify that?
We believe so, yes, sir.
Thank you.
And thank you for your indulgence with our committee and our questions. Do we have any other testimony in support, either here or in Las Vegas? I don't see anyone else at the table. If we can go to the phone lines for testimony in support of Senate Bill 80.
To testify in support of SB 80, please raise your hand in the Zoom window to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers choosing to testify in support at this time.
Sorry, it's very sensitive mic. If we can go now to testimony in opposition of Senate Bill 80. I don't see anyone coming to the table here in Carson City or in Las Vegas, so we can go to the phone lines if there is any testimony in opposition.
To testify in opposition to Senate Bill 80, please raise your hand in the Zoom window to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers choosing to testify in opposition at this time.
Thank you. And a neutral testimony. Do we have anyone testifying in neutral? I don't see anyone here. I don't see anyone in Las Vegas. We can go to the phone lines in neutral testimony on Senate Bill 80.
To testify in neutral to Senate Bill 80, please raise your hand in the Zoom window to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers choosing to testify in neutral at this time.
Thank you. And at this time, I will call the bill sponsor back up to the table. Do you have any final statements to say?
Thank you, Chair. Sean Sever from the DMV. Thank you for hearing our bill today. We're happy to work out some of the kinks of the bill. We did actually submit an amendment on the bill, but we're happy to add to it if that makes this bill better. We do think overall that this bill will help Nevadans buy fewer stolen vehicles and hopefully prevent more people from tampering with their vehicle emission systems. Thanks.
Thank you. And at this time, I will close the hearing on Senate Bill 80, and we will next open the hearing on Senate Bill 85. I see Senator Scheibel here. to present this interim committee bill. And I will just ask you to begin when you are ready.
Thank you so much, Chair Nguyen. As you've mentioned, my name is Melanie Scheibel. I am the State Senator for District 9 in Southern Nevada. It is my pleasure to be here in front of you today, helping to introduce and present SB 85. This measure did come out of the Interim Judiciary Committee, and with me today I have Soraya Bonner. She is my intern in my office who is going to give some opening remarks about the bill and walk you through it. We also have some representatives from the STOP team who are present in Las Vegas, who I think have some comments as well, and have a conceptual amendment to present that I think was provided, I hope was provided to the committee, making just a couple of changes about the mechanics of the reporting. But I'll let them present the bill first, and then we can answer any questions.
Thank you, Chair Nguyen and members of the committee. For the record, I am Soraya Bonner, Soraya and I am Senator Scheibel's intern. I am pleased to present Senate Bill 85, which makes permanent the requirements related to the recording, retention, and reporting of certain traffic stop information. The bill before you today is based on a recommendation from the Joint Interim Standing Committee on the Judiciary, also known as the Interim Judiciary Committee, of which my senator is the vice chair. I would like to begin by providing background information to explain what led to this recommendation. The 2021 session saw the passage of SB 236, which aimed at identifying patterns or practices of profiling by requiring law enforcement agencies to record and retain certain information during traffic stops and report it to Nevada's Department of Public Safety. This information includes the age, ethnicity, race, and sex of the person stopped, among other data. These requirements are set to expire at the end of this year, and this is why SB 85, the measure before you today, comes in. Senate Bill 85 seeks to make requirements concerning the recording, retaining, and reporting of traffic stop information by law enforcement agencies permanent. As we know, traffic stops are one of the most common points of interaction between law enforcement officers and the public. They provide an opportunity for officers to enforce laws, but also create a potential for systemic issues such as profiling to emerge. By systemically recording data during every traffic stop, we can identify trends and patterns of profiling. These patterns are key to uncovering potential biases and law enforcement practices and ensuring that every individual, regardless of age, race, sex, or background, is treated equally under the law. An interim Judiciary Committee meeting, representatives from the Kirk Kerkorian School of Medicine at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, emphasized that continued data collection was needed to accomplish this goal. The interim Judiciary Committee recognized this need and unanimously voted to put this bill forward. At the pleasure of the chair, I will now review the specifics of this bill. Sections 1 and 2 remove the prospective expiration dates of the requirements relating to the recording, retention, and reporting of information regarding traffic stops made by law enforcement officers, making these requirements permanent. Sections 1 and 2 also require law enforcement agencies to report this information to the Director of Legislative Counsel Bureau for transmittal to the Senate and Assembly Standing Committee on Judiciary in odd-numbered years and the Interim Committee in even-numbered years. In closing, I would like to thank you for the opportunity to present this bill today. As we move forward in our commitment to justice and accountability, it is essential that we continue gathering and analyzing data related to traffic stops. This information is not just numbers on a page. It is a tool for transparency, a safeguard against bias, and a means of ensuring that law enforcement serves all communities fairly. By identifying practices and patterns of profiling, we can address disparities, build trust between officers and the public, and work towards a system that upholds the principles of equality and justice. Let us reaffirm our dedication of fairness by supporting the continued collection of this critical data. I urge you to support SB 85. Thank you.
Melanie Scheibel again for the record. I wasn't going to mention this because I'm afraid it might make me look bad, but I just asked Soraya if she wanted to present this like less than half an hour ago, and then she knocked it out of the park. So I just wanted to give her some props for that. And then turn it over to our partners down in Las Vegas.
go ahead and begin when you're ready. Just make sure you state your name for the record.
Sure. Max Gakh, G-A-K-H for the record, from the STOP team at UNLV. Thank you, Chair Nguyen and members of the committee. It's a pleasure to be here today with you all. I just want to thank Senator Scheibel for her work on this bill and really appreciate all of the efforts. We do have a conceptual amendment that we would like to suggest, and it has to do with the data reporting provisions that Senator Scheibel mentioned. The current version of SB 85 would require law enforcement agencies to directly report their data to the legislature, specifically to LCB in odd-numbered years and to the Joint Interim Standing Committee on Judiciary in even-numbered years. And we would suggest that it might make sense to instead have the legislature and those particular entities receive copies of the annual report that analyzes the data that we look at as part of the STOP team project. And the reason for this suggestion is the data that we receive and ultimately analyze in our annual reports is, first of all, voluminous. And second of all, we have folks on our team who spend a good amount of time trying to make sense of it, clean it, do other fancy statistical things to it before we can even use that data. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do you have any other presenters?
No, I have been joined by Mr. Benavides to help answer questions, unless you have something to add. Okay.
Wonderful. I guess I will start. Just to make this clear, we are currently this data is being collected. Obviously, we have the team at UNLV that is now in the process of kind of analyzing this data. And what this bill seeks to do is just to extend this permanently. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Melanie
perfect.
Scheibel for the record.
Do we have any other questions from committee members? Go ahead, Senator Beck.
Thank you so much, Chair Nguyen. I was just wondering, what is preliminary data come out to represent? Are you dissecting it by jurisdictions, or what is the data finding as of right now?
Leonardo Benavides with UNLV. I will defer to Dr. Max Gakh down at the STOP team.
I'm actually going to ask a couple of my colleagues to join me as well.
Can you make sure you all state your name every time you speak, just so we have some clarity on the record? And go ahead and begin when you're ready.
Batil Mavagam, STOP team, UNLV. Thank you so much for the question. Preliminary data, we only did descriptive analysis so far because we've been working with other states, and best practices from other states and statistical analysis requires a large data set as well as multiple additional variables. So we're still working on the data that we receive, and in the future we will be conducting more advanced analysis. That is the only way to assess disparities. So for now we have descriptive reports, but we are planning on doing advanced statistical analysis which require multiple years of data.
Senator Buck, do you have any follow-up to that? Okay. Senator Hansen?
No, that's the kind of question I have.
Okay.
I guess.
Go ahead.
Thanks, Madam Chair. When did we actually start collecting the data? And we don't have any preliminary analysis at all to share with the legislature yet?
The Batil Mavagam for the record, we started collecting the data in 2022. We currently have 3 years of data and 2 reports out, but again, the reports are descriptive because of the depth of the data that we received. The number of variables, the number of records did not allow us to conduct advanced statistical analysis, which is the only way we can assess any type of disparities if existing. Okay. So we do have 2 reports. We did not assess disparities yet.
Thank you.
I guess I have a question kind of along the lines of this. Do we know how much, there's very much science and mathematics involved in like statistical analysis and having to do that kind of stuff. So I appreciate the team at UNLV. being able to analyze that. How many years of data do you need to really draw any kind of conclusions and be able to utilize that data that we could actually utilize when we're making policy decisions?
Bertil Mavagam for the record. To put a number on it, we're working with other states, and most states start with 3 years of data. And we are hoping to have preliminary advanced analysis on our next report, which is due end of this calendar year. So we're hoping to assess some disparities this year.
Thank you. I don't think we have any other questions from committee members. So at this time, we will start with testimony in support of Senate Bill 85. So if you can come up to the table if you are here for support testimony. I don't see anyone here in Carson City, but I do see some people still at the table in Las Vegas. So I don't know if anyone is there to testify in support or just to answer any questions we might have had.
Yes, I'm Deborah Cools, and I'm the Associate Dean for Research and a Professor of Surgery at the Kerkorian School of Medicine at UNLV. I lead the Statistical Transparency of Policing or STOP project. And in this project, UNLV is the third party that analyzes the STOP data in Nevada to identify the potential disparities in traffic stops. And I'd like to continue my testimony in support of this. UNLV's main campus is located in State Senate District 10. And as previously mentioned, our team has been analyzing the data for over 3 years and collaborating with other states engaged in similar efforts to really learn best practices and lessons learned through the fairly complicated statistical analysis. To date, our team has produced 2 annual reports examining the data. We do have hard copies here in Las Vegas, and we'd be happy to provide you with access to the electronic version. Our research and best practices, again, from the other states indicates that several years of data are needed to accurately identify potential disparities. And as Dr. Mavagam already talked about, we are going to attempt to do that this year. The current requirement to collect traffic stop data in Nevada is set to expire at the end of 2025. And SB 85 really proposes to remove the sunset provision requiring the data collection into the future. And it is really essential to ensure that our research team can continue analyzing this data and conducting the in-depth statistical analysis to better assess potential disparities in traffic stops in our state. Collecting and analyzing traffic stop data is important to not only promote transparency, increase public trust, and inform potential interventions. Ultimately, this data may help inform practices that reduce injuries and fatalities on our roadways. And I should mention that I'm a trained trauma surgeon and the chief of trauma at University Medical Center, and it would really be fantastic if we could use this data to reduce injuries and fatalities on our roadways. I appreciate your time and consideration, and I am happy to provide any additional information. You're very welcome to contact me at my email address at UNLV. And thank you again for the opportunity to testify in support of SB 85.
Thank you. Do we have any other testimony in support of Senate Bill 85? Seeing none, if we can go to the phone lines, do we have any testimony in support of Senate Bill 85?
To testify in support of Senate Bill 85, please raise your hand in the Zoom window to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers choosing to testify in support at this time.
Thank you. Next, we will move to testimony in opposition of Senate Bill 85. If I can ask you to come to the table, state your name, spell it for the record too, and go ahead and begin when you're ready.
Where's the button? Oh, it's on. Okay. Hello, my name is Joshua Martinez. I represent the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. I would just like to stand in opposition to the bill where it addresses the continuation forever of the collection of the data information. As you heard from UNLV, they're in support of the 3-year at the original onset of this when it was adopted at a previous legislative session, which we're willing to collect that data. We're currently doing that data, but the continuation forever is problematic for us to live with. And we believe that best practices, as stated by UNLV on the record, would be 3 years like other states. So we're in opposition to that, and we've been presented with the amendment that they made, and we're okay with that amendment.
Good afternoon, Chair Wen, members of the committee. Jason Walker, Jasonwalker, on behalf of the Washington County Sheriff's Office, testifying in opposition. I agree with Captain Martinez. No need to continue collecting the stats with no end date. I am in receipt of the amendment and understands the intent of identifying patterns of or practices of profiling. I've worked in patrol for many, many years, specifically to traffic controls. I could tell you from my experience, the last thing that I noticed was the driver. It's the action of the vehicle that gets it pulled over. So testifying in opposition.
I'm sorry, Mr. Martinez, can I just clarify? You said that, are you in support if the amendment is accepted?
No, so the amendment that was provided to me was simply addressing the data reporting and collection, because currently, right now, as it reads in section 1 and 2, it requires such law enforcement agencies to report that information to the Director of the Legislative Council Bureau, and then during legislative years, the Senate and Assembly. So what it would do is the information would be the amendment would make the information we wouldn't, as law enforcement, have to report as that section says now. We would just simply collect the data. It goes to the state, and then the state would send that to UNLV. So it eliminates that reporting process.
No, I understand what the amendment does. You said that you were supportive of the amendment.
Well, the amendment, but the amendment doesn't strike out the continuation permanently. So I don't support, if that's what the amendment did, that wasn't my understanding. So we're not in support of continuing data collection forever.
Okay, so you're not in support of the UNLV School of Medicine's amendment?
Then no, we would not be.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to clarify.
Okay.
I'm looking at Las Vegas. I don't see anyone coming to the table in opposition to the bill. Can we go to the phone lines for any opposition testimony to Senate Bill 85?
To testify in opposition to Senate Bill 85, please raise your hand in the Zoom window to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers choosing to testify in opposition at this time.
Thank you. Next, we can go to testimony in neutral. Do we have any neutral testimony? I don't see anyone here in Carson or in Las Vegas, so if we can go to the phone lines for any neutral testimony.
To testify in neutral to Senate Bill 85, please raise your hand in the Zoom window to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers choosing to testify in neutral at this time.
Thank you. And I will invite the presenters. Do you have anything further to say? Okay, and then at this time, we will close the hearing on Senate Bill 85, and we'll move to the last item on our agenda, which is public comment. I remind everyone to limit your public comment to 2 minutes, and I will see if anyone's running to the table. And I don't see anyone here at the table in Las Vegas or in Carson City, or I should say here in Carson City or out in Las Vegas. And with that, we will move to the phone lines. Is there any public comment?
If you would like to provide public comment, please raise your hand in the Zoom window to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers choosing to provide public comment at this time.
Thank you. With that, we will close public comment and meeting is adjourned.